A suspected poisoning attack on the wife of Kirillo Budanov, who's the head of the Ukrainian military's main intelligence directorate, comes against the backdrop of broader infighting between Ukraine's civilian and military leadership, following comments made by the commander-in-chief of Kiev's armed forces, Valery Zelensky, to the British media outlet The Economist last month that, in essence, Ukraine's counteroffensive had reached a stalemate and that the front had settled into World War I-style trench warfare. Zelensky's comments were followed by a partial reshuffling of Ukraine's military leadership by the president, Volodymyr Zelensky. Also, one of Zelensky's closest aides, Major Hennady Shostakovich, was killed after a live grenade given to him as a birthday present exploded in his home. The apparent teetering of the Kiev regime comes at a time when Western support, which has propped up the regime since the 2014 coup, is beginning to collapse. Ukraine's political leadership denies any conflict between the president and chief of the armed forces. Nevertheless, it appears that even the Ukrainian people are choosing up sides and are divided on the question. According to the results of a recent sociological study reported by the Strana.ua website, Ukrainians trust Commander-in-Chief Zelensky more than President Zelensky. According to the data, Zelensky has an 82% approval rating, while Zelensky is at 72%. Likewise, 63% fully trust Zelensky, and 19% tend to trust him more, while for Zelensky the numbers are 39% and 33%. Respectively. What does all this mean? We go to Moscow to speak with analyst Mark Sleboda to find out. Mark?
Don, while everything on the battlefield now appears to be solidly going Russia's way, and if you're a Western media consumer, I think you probably must need to see a chiropractor from the whiplash, because we have gone from Kiev is winning, the Kiev regime is winning, to a stalemate, to now the Economist, the British news weekly, are rapidly, for decades, a Russophobic magazine has a cover, Putin is winning, right? Or is Putin winning? Asked rhetorically, but answered, yeah, caveats and hems and haws, but yeah, they admit it within the article. Now, of course, they have to it's standard Western media practice to demonize any opponent into a single person. So it's not Russia winning, or not the Russian military winning. It's Putin, because we have to, our infantile conception of international politics always reduces anyone who resists us just down to one leader that we think we can remove, and everything would be fine, kind of nonsense. Right. But while all this is going on the battlefield, there is major rifts growing, a major political crisis also happening in Kiev, with even the New York Times a couple weeks ago openly headlining articles about the rift. And the primary rift, now there are numerous factions within the regime, right? But the primary rift they're talking about is between the quote unquote president, the comedian Zelensky, and his top general, Valery Zelensky. And this has been growing for months, and I've been talking about it, as it has been developing this way. But now it's so far into the open that New York Times is openly talking about it, and it's impossible to deny at this point. So, and we know from sources reported, within the Ukrainian government, in the West, were reported in the Western mainstream media, that Zelensky is no longer even talking to his top general, and evidently hasn't done so in a few months. He is issuing commands directly to the generals underneath Zelensky, just creating an entirely parallel chain of command, him directly giving orders to generals. And Zelensky is just completely left out of the loop at this point, and furious by all accounts.
Let me just ask you, so Zelensky concocts some military scheme that he then dispatches to the people who are going to implement it down a chain of command. Who is he conferring with? Like, where is he? Look, we know he can play piano as long as he has a partner. But what's his military background?
Yeah, I think he did a skit once where he played someone who had military experience. I believe he's consulting with his National Security Council, right? Which does include, people like Budanov, this genocidal military intelligence head, and other people. But increasingly, it does seem closed because most of the generals, it appears, are loyal, quote unquote, to Zelensky, right? So they're having problems with this. And Zelensky just did a tour of several frontline areas. He had meetings with the generals where they discussed what went wrong with the offensive and what to do now, staged for the cameras. But Zelensky, the general in charge of the offensive, wasn't there. So it's pretty obvious that Zelensky wants to get rid of Zelensky. But evidently, Lloyd Austin's visit to Kiev a little, in the last 2 weeks, he was apparently told you can't get rid of him, right? That this would cause enormous damage, that, we're already having problems, political speed bumps, getting you more aid and more, financial support and more arms. And this would make it impossible. It would lose confidence at this point, and you need to tamp this down. And the result that seemed to come out of that is that Zelensky doubled down. And has done, Zelensky hasn't been fired yet. But he came right out and said that he made a statement a little over a week ago that generals must stay out of politics. They cannot run for office. If he wants to run against, he didn't say it exactly that, but if you want to run in politics, meaning run against him, then you need to resign. Right. But it was a threat for the military to stay out of politics. And it seems pretty clear that the U.S. for a long time has been wanting to switch horses to Zelensky, right? That's why they were pushing for Zelensky to hold elections next year as scheduled, right? In Ukrainian politics, quote unquote elections. Yes, all of the real opposition parties are banned, and they have complete control of the media under a unified information policy. It would just be changing horses within the regime itself. But that's what the U.S. wants. And they would have preferred to do it with a veneer of democracy, because that's supposedly what they're fighting for in Ukraine, rather than another West-backed coup in the country so soon after the last one that set this whole thing in motion in 2014. But Zelensky has been acting against Zelensky for months, but various political intrigues, investigations meant to tar him in the public's eye, in the West's eye, to try to stop this off of the pass, to preserve his own power. And now he said there will be no elections. There will be no parliamentary elections. Now, he does have the backing of the Ukrainian constitution on that because of the state of martial law, the emergency powers. There shouldn't be any elections, but the U.S. is not happy with this because, let's face it, they have ways of changing governments if the democratic way can't be achieved, color revolution trademark. So there's a lot going on right now. We've also seen strikes as Zelensky has fired at least two of the top generals in the country who are close to Zelensky. One of them was the head of the Kiev regime special forces, whom the U.S. military was very angry about because they liked working with this guy, evidently. He spoke their language. And the woman who was in charge of the Ukraine military's medical divisions. So also Zelensky's top aide, Colonel Major Chestyakov, he died a couple of weeks ago in what was either, take your pick, what story you believe, a moronic accident with a grenade at his own birthday party, killing him and wounding his son, or a political hit, which is what most of the Ukrainian social media channels are assumed what happened. And the name of Zelensky's powerful Grey Cardinal Chief of Staff, Yermak, is the name that's tossed around that's doing the fighting back. We also had one of the Rada members, the parliamentary members, who is a member of Zelensky's Servant of the People Party, and Maria Bogi. Got the name off my page here for a second, but one of his top servant of the peoples, who is also a deputy on the Kiev Rada's Defense and Security Committee, and she's all right. She said, "You don't have a plan for 2024. To Zelensky, you need to step down. You need to resign. You're responsible for this fiasco." So openly calling for him to step down and attacking him. And on top of that, now we have the mayor of Kiev, Klitschko.
Yes.
Vitaly Klitschko, the former boxer who was one of the three public leaders of the Maidan Putsch.
One of the most popular, by the way, because he has like a whole working. He's a hero athlete.
Yeah, kind of, in parts of the country anyway. But he's come out now solidly against Zelensky, saying he's turning the country authoritarian, and concentrating power, becoming a dictator, essentially. And this is, of course it's true, but it's long been true. But evidently now Zelensky is not only banning and persecuting all of the real opposition in the country, now he's even taking total control of the voices within the Maidan regime and stomping down anyone who dares. We had a piece in Time by Simon Schuster talked to Ukrainian officials who were part of the government, and they described Zelensky as delusional, and essentially an emperor with no clothes, that you can't even talk to him that they're losing the war because he doesn't allow such things to be spoken, and there's repercussions for it.
Of course, Washington won't allow this either, and so that's where we're at, and we'll speak with you again next week.
Thanks for having me.
For KPFK, I'm Don DeBar.